I actually found that I drink some beers that I thought were craft beers, and they're actually owned by massive companies. So first, what is a craft beer? You know, a lot of people think that their beers are brewed in very small batches, but according to the Brewers Association, a craft beer is any beer brewer that makes less than 6 million barrels a year. That's a heck of a lot of beer. There's 248 pints in each barrel, and even more, 6 million barrels, than the IRS considers a small brewery. The IRS thinks you have to only make 2 million barrels, so even fewer beers. But, you know, I keep a little list on my iPhone of what beers I like and what beers I don't like, and I was shocked to find a few of my favorites owned by Anheuser-Busch. Goose Island makes an IPA that I absolutely love.
But does that make the beer taste any worse?
No, it doesn't, but it's just interesting. A lot of people wouldn't know, for example, that some of these beers, you might know Shock Top, but you wouldn't think Blue Point is owned by Anheuser-Busch. Take a look at the ones owned by Miller Coors. You might think of Blue Moon because it's gotten so popular, and Killian's because it's kind of an old school beer, but Leinenkugel's owned by Miller Coors, it's kind of shocking. Now, it doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. You know, I mean, Volkswagen owns Ducati, but that doesn't mean they have German guys building those Italian race bikes. And I'm sure the same is true with the big brewers. They probably let a lot of these...
I was going to say, do they allow for the methods to stay the same?
They try and separate themselves in a lot of different ways. So for one thing, they create separate holding companies to own the smaller labels that they own. Miller Coors has a division called 10th and Blake Beer Company to try and blur the lines. AB InBev created Green Valley Brewery so that when you're on one of their smaller labels' websites, it'll say, you know, owned by Green Valley Brewery and not owned by AB InBev, which might scare off some people.
But what about the true craft brewers, though? Are they getting squeezed out? Is that also part of the concern?
Well, the true craft brewers do get some real serious advantages. Tax advantages, for one thing. You know, I mentioned the IRS. If you brew less than 2 million barrels a year, then you only have to pay $7 per barrel on the first 60,000 that you brew. It's kind of complicated, but let's just say you're only paying $7 in tax, where everybody else has to pay $18 in tax. So almost a third the tax that Uncle Sam demands from you. And there are other advantages to operating on that small scale, but most craft brewers are really brew pubs. In fact, there were 3,700 brewers licensed last year, the most that have been licensed since the early 1800s, and out of that, about a third of them were brew pubs, so actual bars that just happen to have breweries set up in them.
So it sounds like you had to do a lot of taste testing to figure out.
I have been working on this story for about 25 years.
I imagine you have been.